Hello and welcome to Penguin Book Club. This is a place to come and delve into all those classics you always wanted to read. Today we'll be chatting about one of my favourite books, which is Vanity Fair. I'd like to first welcome Susanna Fullerton as our resident queen of the classics at Penguin Book Club. She's the patron of the Kipling Society of Australia, president of the Jane Austen Society of Australia for the past 18 years, founding member of the New South Wales Dickens Society and of the Australian Bronte Association, and member of the Dylan Thomas Society of Australia. Susanna is Sydney's best-known lecturer on classic novels, and she lectures regularly at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Welcome, Susanna.
Hi.
I'd also like to welcome Sarah Burns, who's the president of the Australian Bronte Society, Louise Owens, author of the blog readmeblogsite.net, and Jo Henwood, who's the founder of the Swashbucklers and founding member of the Australian Fairy Tale Society. Welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, we'd also like to welcome back all our book club members watching out there. And don't forget to pop your questions into the comments, and we'll certainly do our best to get to them during the hangout. Now, this book, I don't think I'm able to sum it up in anything that will take less than 20 minutes. So I'm just going to say that it's about the girl from the good family, Miss Amelia Sedley, and the orphan Miss Becky Sharp, who upon their departure from Miss Pinkerton's academy on Chiswick Mall to live out their lives of Vanity Fair, show that this book is all about the world of social climbing and a search for wealth. Our two heroines are the opposite of each other, as we discover that Amelia does not esteem the values of Vanity Fair, whereas Becky cares for nothing else. Let the games begin, Susanna.
Well, it is, of course, one of the great novels of the Victorian world. It was first published 1847 to 1848 in serial instalments, then came out as a novel. It was hugely popular and has remained one of the great classics ever since. It's been filmed many times. Thackeray wrote other novels, but most of them have pretty much sunk out of sight. Vanity Fair has lasted. And I think one of the reasons it has lasted is because it's got a truly incredible heroine, Becky Sharp. We see her, first of all, as you said, leaving the Young Ladies' Academy, where she's been rather used for her abilities to speak French and has been rather badly treated. She is presented with a real symbol of the establishment, Dr. Johnson's dictionary, and Becky hurls it out of the carriage window. We know from that very first moment that Becky is going to be a heroine who's very different indeed. She has no connections, she has no money, she has no family to help her. All she's got is her good looks and her wits, and we see Becky using those throughout the novel. I think she starts off as a wonderful heroine. I love her feistiness, her spiritedness, the way she doesn't let things cast her down. She's forever resourceful. I think she's brave. But you do tend to lose sympathy for Becky as the novel goes on. She lies, she cheats, possibly she's an adulteress, possibly even at the end of the novel she kills off Joss Sedley. She's a shocking mother to her son. So she's certainly a heroine who's never boring, but is very controversial. So what do you all think of Becky Sharp? Jo, what do you think of her?
I love her to start off with. As you say, she wears out the friendship a little bit, and you wouldn't want to spend a too long a time with her with your nearest and dearest, or give her your password to your Google account. But she's interesting. She is a fun person. She's a modern character too. I felt that very much in the beginning when you're first meeting her, and she's so bored with all these good, stupid women in that women's academy, that schoolhouse she's got. And I think, yeah, I'd be bored too. Every one of us would be, absolutely just throwing dictionaries out of windows at the side of these people. Yeah. She's fun, and she laughs. She laughs at jokes at herself, which is a very endearing quality. Yeah. And her ability to lie on tap is second to none in literature, I think.
She's a resourceful liar.
She's fun. Yeah, within certain parameters.
Yeah. Louise, what do you think of her?
Well, I must say, there's not that much to like about Becky. I find, I mean, when she hurls that dictionary out of the cab, you think, okay, we've got a feisty one here. Let's start the book. You know, it's going to be a bit of a rollicking ride, and it is. It's really interesting, and I think she's used very well from Thackeray's point of view for good versus bad, and is manipulation versus blind love, or truth versus lies. I can't work out how she keeps remembers which lies she's told and which ones she hasn't, because she has to keep spinning the webs. Yes, exactly.
The eye works a treat for a lot of them.
Well, the handkerchief comes out, yeah.
But Sarah, does Becky have many options? I mean, as a woman with, as I say, no money, no connections, no background, nothing to help her, does she have many options in order to survive in Regency society as a woman on her own?
I think it's very the scene is set right early when they say, well, she was never a girl, she was a woman from the age of 8. I mean, she's been carted around by her father, and goodness knows what she's seen and experienced, and she's turned away the debt collectors at the door, and but she uses what she's got, and that's her wits and her connections. She decides quite early on that she's going to be better than Amelia. She's going to be in a higher position, because she's not going to be the governess forever. Then when she meets the Crawleys, she works out who's going to be a good person to be on side with and who isn't. She decides Lady Crawley's useless, so it doesn't bother with her, but she is gets everyone else under her spell, and then of course she takes over as the companion to Miss Crawley. She does what she can.
Don't you think that if Becky were alive today, she'd be running her own company, she'd be she'd be really successful in the modern world, because there is a place for Becky in the modern world, but there's just no place for her in the Regency world. And of course what Thackeray does is continually contrast her with Amelia. And I'd just like to read you this quote about Amelia Sedley. Wherever she went, she touched and charmed everyone of the male sex as invariably as she awakened the scorn and incredulity of her own sisterhood. I think it was her weakness which was her chief charm. Now, do you find any charm in Amelia? And does she charm all the males? I mean, she charms Dobbin, but really she doesn't succeed in charming nearly as many men as Becky does, for example. What's Thackeray telling us with Amelia and the wonderful contrast he makes with Becky? What do you think, Louise?
For me, Amelia is the example of the blind love. She doesn't. She just sets on something, and she thinks this is a good thing, and she's not at all manipulative. She just takes it as it comes. She has blind love for her husband and then her son. Whereas to me, Becky is always thinking, thinking through her next steps. So I think that's a really good contrast, Becky and
I think Amelia's manipulative in being the sort of clinging vine type of heroine. I think she's, in her own way, is as manipulative as Becky, but in a more sort of accepted feminine way. In the way that she clings and she sort of over-mothers and over-protects and plays the helpless idiot, although actually she is an idiot throughout most of the book.
Well, this is what it's very conflicting for me to know the audience that Thackeray was writing for, were they seeing her as the perfect woman, that this is the way a good girl should be, and it's just because we're in 2014 that you want to slap her around a bit and say, get a grip, woman, because really if her life is emotions, she's really appalling at it. She can't read character at all. Her EQ must be in single digits. She's just appalling that way.
If you have a look at those women that Dickens creates and sets up as the ideal heroines, well, Amelia is very like a character out of Dickens.
Yeah,
and Thackeray did not admire Dickens's women. So I think he's showing Amelia to be pathetic, helpless, not a survivor like Becky. So she's a wonderful contrast, I think. Now, of course, she's besotted with George, and Dobbin is besotted with her, which leads us to, I think, a very important point in this novel. Thackeray very famously and quite controversially subtitled it A Novel Without a Hero. And that's a very unusual thing in literature. Most novels, certainly most 19th century novels, have a hero who by the end of the novel marries the heroine. And Thackeray is telling us right from the beginning, this is a novel where you're not going to get a hero. He's cheating us of that romantic, hero that we're expecting through the course of the novel. So can any of the men in this book even partly fulfill the role of hero? Who comes closest to being the hero? George, Dobbin, Rawdon?
Dobbin, I think.
Dobbin?
Dobbin.
Why, Sarah?
He's the constant. He's the one that changes the least. He's good and he's got good intentions. He's a bit hopeless, but if he realises Amelia's not as good as he thought she was.
It takes him it takes him several hundred pages to work that out. And does Thackeray really want a hero to be named Dobbin, like a donkey?
No.
I mean, he's given him a very unheroic name, hasn't he?
Well, he's Biggs at the beginning, isn't he?
Yes.
At school.
And he's sort of clumsy, and he adores stupid Amelia. And is he a hero? What do you think, Jo? You're pulling faces.
Yes, I feel for Dobbin, and he does grow up in the end, which is appealing in its own right. But he is the person through whose eyes you most clearly see the world, the Vanity Fair, that you can survey it from. He has an ideal view, a moral stance from which to judge what else is going on. And I mean, too good to be true in a lot of ways. You'd hope that he'd drop a few hints about what his own particular desires, but I did get a lot of satisfaction when he finally said, right, you've lost it, you've blown it, you're not good enough for me, I'm out. And she goes, you're going?
Yeah.
Oh.
After all this time.
Let me think about this, I'll get back to you.
Louise, what about George? Can George even begin to fill the role of hero?
Not for me. No.
Why not?
You're talking about George, the husband.
Yeah.
No, I just think, how awful, what a horrible, horrible husband and a horrible experience he leaves his poor Amelia with. I just don't think that the reader can garner any kind of sympathy or love. He might have started off with great intentions, but the way he hides that little note in the posy for Rebecca and then he goes to war, I mean, how terribly sad. No, he's not the hero for me.
Yeah. And what about Rawdon? Now, I must admit I've got quite a soft spot for Rawdon. He's a lovely dad to his son. He's not the brightest of individuals, but he can do his card playing and make something from that. And he's pretty devoted to Becky and, tries to make her a good husband. Yeah. And I really like his name, Rawdon. I think it's a nice, strong name, and I don't like the name Dobbin. What do you think of Rawdon? Does Rawdon win any hearts? Sarah, can he be the hero of this novel?
I think so, and I think was it Nathaniel Parker? No. Somebody who, that dashing good looks, the dark hair, played him so well in the BBC series. He's cheeky, he's a likely lad, he's very good to his aunt when he knows he's going to be the heir, but that he tries after he loses her good intentions, but he's an interesting but naughty boy, I think. Very naughty.
Fabulous.
And of course, that aunt was so utterly wonderfully played by Miriam Margolyes in the BBC. She was just so perfect in that role. Now, this is, of course, a very satirical novel. And a lot of its humour is harsh humour. It's not light, bubbly, frothy humour at all. It's in many ways a harsh and deeply critical novel of its society. But there are some very funny scenes. I love the way that Becky tries to trap Joss Sedley by netting that green purse. And there's the lovely scene where she's given curry and chili to eat, and of course nearly dies from the heat. And then that scene at Vauxhall where she thinks she's going to get Jost, she's going to capture him on this night, he will propose, and then of course he gets completely blotto on rack punch. Opportunity. So there is some great comedy in this novel, but all those scenes I've mentioned near the beginning. Does the comedy disappear as the novel goes on? Does it get harsher and less comical? How funny is Vanity Fair? What do you think, Louise?
It was the humour that kept me going. I read it a long time ago, but on the rereading, it was a humour that kept me going. I thought it was fascinating. It sounds like all of the young men thought that they were put on the earth for the women to worship them, and I thought that was great that Thackeray would bring that out. And he would say things like, Amelia believed her lover, Lieutenant Osborne, to be one of the most gallant and brilliant men in the Empire, and it is possible that Lieutenant Osborne thought so too. So things like that were just really pithy, and that kept me going. He also, I think Thackeray had quite a lot of fun with the names. You talked about Dobbin before, but we had
Lord Stane.
That's right. We had Waterloo Sedley. Now, Joss was the civilian who saw no action, but he was referred to as Waterloo Sedley. There was Ribbons for one very flirtatious girl. There was the lady, the medicine chest, Forceps, the hunting dog, the female bullock, Lord Tapeworm, and Sir Thomas Coffin. I think he had a lot of fun. Those kind of things kept me going through that. Quite a lengthy novel.
Yeah. Sarah, did you find it a funny novel?
I did. I think it's very clever. Some of it's a bit sharp, and Becky Sharp, of course, with the name. She can be quite pointed, some of her comments, and she's not a very nice friend. I wouldn't like to be her friend. I think it's very, very well done. I think we laugh at these people. We see them doing things they shouldn't be doing. George being given money by Dobbin to buy something for Amelia, and he buys himself a nice diamond pin, and she admires it. I haven't seen that before. And we think, you're a bugger. So there are things that we can laugh at. And some of the scenes you think, oh no.
Yeah.
How have you got yourself into that mess?
From doing things, don't you? You feel like saying to Becky, just don't do it. Don't tell that lie. Don't do this, because you can see she's digging herself deeper and deeper into some mess. So at times it's a frustrating novel. Letitia, you were wanting to say something?
I'm going to ask you actually, was Thackeray known for his acid tongue outside of his novel writing? I mean, was this something that was of his style or of his person?
Well, Thackeray was always satirical, both as an artist and as a writer. He actually thought he'd have a career as a caricaturist with art before he eventually turned to writing novels. And he himself had led a very wild youth. There'd been womanizing, too much drinking, gambling. He'd gambled away most of his fortune before he was old enough to inherit it. And then he married and settled down, and tragically his wife, after giving him 2 living daughters, they lost a daughter, went mad, and she had to be shut away in an asylum. And then many years later, Charlotte Bronte dedicated Jane Eyre to Thackeray, meaning it as a huge compliment to the man. She had no idea he had a mad wife shut away. So it was the most appalling faux pas to dedicate a woman about a novel about a mad wife in an attic to a man who had a mad wife shut away, not in an attic, but quite clearly shut away. So poor Charlotte was mortified when she found that out. So Thackeray's a fascinating man as well as an amazing writer. Have any of you read any other Thackeray novels?
No, but I want to read Henry Esmond.
He thought that was his masterpiece, but I found it as dull as ditch water.
Oh, really?
Get my lights going again.
Must be better.
I did enjoy Thackeray's company. You know,
Yeah.
when we started the book, he was such a fun companion as we walked through these scenes, and he's pointing them out and caricaturing them, and he's just an enjoyable person to spend 700 odd pages with.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm back again. Yeah, look, most of his other novels have dated. Pendennis, Barry Lyndon, the Newcombes, the Virginians, Henry Esmond. They're not novels that have lasted. But it's also interesting that what Thackeray's doing in Vanity Fair is writing an historical novel. It's set back in the past. It's not contemporary to the Victorian age as the novels of Dickens were, apart from Tale of Two Cities. So he's writing an historical novel, and so he's doing something a bit different by doing that. And of course he's covering real historical events like the Battle of Waterloo. So I think the Waterloo scenes are brilliant.
Mm.
And the ballroom scene?
Yes, the famous ball, the scramble to get out of Brussels and get horses and get carriages out of the battle. All of that he does quite brilliantly, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Verve. It's a novel in colour, isn't it?
Very
Noisy novel.
Yes.
Noise of the fair.
And it is packed with characters. Somebody said to me once that there was not a single nice character in this novel. Would any of you agree with that? Who's nice in this book? Who would you want to sit down and have a cup of tea with?
I think there's nice people, but they're sort of coupled with other more apparent attributes, like Amelia's nice, but bloody annoying. Don't forget that she's nice.
Always a but, isn't there?
Yeah, there's always
Same with Dobber.
Life. I mean, you know, anybody that I love, you know, they're really, really good, but they're not perfect. And if they were, why would they hang out with me? You know.
But are they nice? You know, or is this a book full of people that really are not terribly nice?
I think they have their moments.
Yeah. And I like Jane. I like Pitt's wife Jane. I love her. And yes, Amelia. Yes, Dobbin. You know, you'd want to pull him aside occasionally and have a long, straight chat with him. But you could say that he wasn't a nice person. But I liked Jane actually. I thought she was. It sounds like a Thackeray insult, but she was a good woman.
And what's interesting is that Natasha Little, who played Becky in the BBC series, played Jane in the
other series.
Witherspoon
I
film.
haven't seen it. What's it like? What's she like in that?
Which
She's
one?
fabulous as Becky.
Oh yes, I realise that. But as a nice woman.
Oh, I think she's a wonderful actress. She's very good.
Yeah. There have been some excellent television adaptations of Vanity Fair. It's a novel that films well because there's lots of action, you know, romance, drama, death, intrigue, and such an enormous cast of characters. I mean, Thackeray does something quite amazing to keep all those characters in his story and all clearly delineated and, you know, especially coming out in serial installments, to keep a hand, to keep track of all those characters is really quite something.
And when you say that it's a novel without a hero, in fact, we're following at least 3 characters platted in of Dobbin and Amelia and Becky. There are chapters at a time when you're not really walking beside Becky at all, so they're just woven into each other to create
There's only 6 main characters really, aren't there? And we just follow their lives, but it is a fascinating weave.
Yeah, and I think this is a book that has inspired other heroines. I think it's been an influential novel. So who immediately comes to mind as being inspired by Becky Sharp?
Scarlett O'Hara.
Yeah, it has to be Scarlett O'Hara, doesn't it? Feisty, brave, resourceful, lies, steals other people's boyfriends.
But Scarlett was motivated.
Very romantic times, so there's so much in common.
But Scarlett was motivated by love. I mean, it was a strange sort of love. But who does Becky love other than Becky?
True.
And Melanie seems such a wimp and inspires Scarlett scorn, but Margaret Mitchell actually admired her a lot and saw that sword of steel within Mellie, where poor old Amelia, her steel is
doesn't have that same strength. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
I think we can all agree that we may not want Becky Sharp as a friend, but she certainly does make for an entertaining heroine in this novel. But I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for Penguin Book Club today. Our next book club will be on the 24th of July, where we'll be reading Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South, and we really look forward to seeing you all then. Sarah, Jo, Louise, Susanna, thank you so much for a wonderful book club today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.